Have you ever gotten to a point where you are just tired to your core? Maybe physically, maybe mentally or emotionally. Fatigue has just taken over. Well, as turns out, mindfulness has something to say about that and ways to help deal with it. Welcome to Mindfulness Voyage. My name is Ted Meissner. Thank you so much for being here. And today we're going to be discussing how mindfulness can help with fatigue. Please do remember to subscribe when you have a moment, as it does help people find this podcast. Now, let's talk with our expert today. Our guest today is Fiona McKechnie. Welcome to the podcast. Good to see you.
Hello, Ted. Hello.
So glad you are here, and I'm wondering if by way of introduction you could give us just a brief overview of who you are, what you do in mindfulness.
Oh, a brief overview. Okay, so I'm so my professional background is an occupational therapist, and I've specialized working in the field of fatigue, particularly ME, chronic fatigue syndrome, kind of chronic pain, fibromyalgia, that kind of domain, and latterly long COVID for about 25, 26 years, scary number of years, really. And over about the past 15 years or so, doing developing a mindfulness-based program. I say developing because it's always developing, isn't it? It's always moving on. But that came off the back of I've had a practice since I was a teenager, really. So I've been involved in that sort of world for a long time. So I sort of started developing that about 15 years ago, and we've got on a full program for the last few years. Is
Excellent.
that
And
enough
you've
of
also
an overview, Ted?
Yeah, it is. And you've also written a book about this. And for those who are watching this episode, I'll have a link to that so you can follow up on it. But we're really focusing on this fatigue stuff. But I'm wondering if you could map this territory a little bit more for us. What do you mean by fatigue? It's not just, I didn't get much sleep last night. There's more to it than that.
Masses more to it than that. Yeah. So the people that I see have tended to have had something happen in their life. The most obvious thing for a lot of people at the moment has been COVID. They've had that, but also people have had experience of those sorts of conditions, illnesses for a long time. So the glandular fevers, other viruses, tropical diseases, that kind of thing. But also just sometimes it happens for some people, could have been protracted stress, or we just don't know because the conditions seem to sort of just emerge. So the people that we see, there's often been sometimes quite a dramatic onset. So they're often very previously very active, very fit, doing all sorts of things. Then something happens, and then they might have medical treatment for that. And then in theory, they no longer have the virus, the infection, the stress is gone, whatever it is. But they are significantly affected, actually disabled. So they have the symptoms people experience it is fatigue. I wish there was another word. So feeling like I've got flu and a hangover is probably the best description of it. So feeling really, really sick. So sometimes people can't lift their arms sometimes. So really, really exhausted. Can't sometimes struggle to mobilize, get dressed. Some people it's even sorting out food is tricky. The act of chewing can be fatiguing. So it's a very physical fatigue. Often there's a lot of pain involved as well, and it can be pervasive pain, so all over the body, can move around. But also with it can come mental fatigue, which is really difficult. So I've had university lecturers who can no longer read, maths teachers who can no longer use money. So it can get really, the cognitive stuff can be very difficult. And so there can be specific cognitive problems like concentration, attention, memory. But the description a lot of people give is of being in a fog like very slow processing and very kind of, yeah, so very, very uncomfortable, and it's almost hard to be specific about what that is because everything's slowed up. So that's the sort of main features of it. And the one of the cardinal features of it as well is that people it's not a sleep disorder. So that's one of the things that's screened for. So people will have had they'll have had an effectively a good night's sleep, looks quite normal, but they wake up feeling like they haven't slept or they feel worse. So it's a bit like if you have had a viral infection, sometimes we can feel like that come when you wake up in the morning, you still feel dreadful. That's how people are feeling sometimes. You know, they had something happened 5 years ago and they're still feeling like that. So there's many more. I think there's about I don't know, there's about 50 symptoms that go with ME/CFS. And I think long COVID, I don't know, this is true, but somebody says probably about 200 potential symptoms. So it's a huge sort of ongoing experience that affects everyone I see is struggling at work. They're either not at work or they're struggling. So the disability levels are really high. They might need help. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
with
what
that,
we're talking about.
with
Mm,
those disability levels, and that's an important thing to understand here, is
mm.
it's not the same thing as you didn't get a good night's sleep and you're a little off. This is debilitating, that it's the
Yeah,
cognitive function is impaired, and that really cascades into so many different aspects of your life.
yeah.
And so there are people coming to you who have a wide variety of different
Mm,
symptoms, different ways this may be showing up for them. And you
mm,
mentioned a few of the different potential causes for this,
mm.
just that are known causes, let alone some of those that have not been traced. I'm wondering if you could say
Yeah.
what it's like when you're working with someone and they're not quite sure where this might come from and what that experience is like for them, that the uncertainty itself may compound some of the struggles that they're running into. What's that like?
Well, I think that's really difficult, and because most people we've seen, so their journey to come, I hate that word journey,
Yeah.
but let's use it because it is. It might have been several years before they come to our clinic, and it can feel like they've had loads and loads of tests, and they have doctors going, "Great news, there's nothing wrong." And they're going, yeah, but I've just lost my job, or I can't finish my studies, or, you know, I'm struggling to take the kids to school, you know. So so then they can be a compound that with significant sort of self-blame, feeling like, oh, is this so, you know, what's going on? I should try harder. And then the experiences with this world is that there's a lot of people out there who want your money. So there's all that stuff. Lots of people have tried all sorts of things. Really, yeah, really difficult. And then, so one of the things we do is try and track what is the history, what's happened. And often you can find something. Did you think it was that? And you go, well, did things change then? Or it's off. Sometimes it's a compound of things. And actually, as the condition goes on, fatigue can compound as well. So sometimes it takes a while to sort of unpack that. And I guess what we know is because we see these, if you look at the research, these symptoms and this experience of these sorts of conditions shows up across the world, across gender, across race, across class. So it's a thing. I think that's what we can say. And so are we making up a nice story to say, oh yeah, it was the virus that did that? We don't know. It could be that it's a thing that some people have got for some reason because we don't know the mechanism for it. I mean, there's probably better people than me can explain all the biology of it, but I would say we see such a clear cluster and pattern of symptoms and the experience of the symptoms. And you just think, well, yeah, that's it. We don't quite know why you're there. So one of the things we do is kind of really reassure people, go, well, this is the thing. And when we get people together and go, in a webinar just to sort of outline this, a bit like what I'm doing now, just talking about it, and they go, oh, that's part of it as well, is it? That's it. So it's got a shape. There's a clear set of symptoms and there's a clear shape, and the shape of it is often it's post-exertional, so people can do something and then they really can't. So it's sort of, it goes in this sort of fluctuating pattern. And the symptoms ebb and flow as well, which makes it even more confusing and stressful, and compounds the suffering as well.
Fiona, you mentioned something that was really interesting to me is that there is the research. There's been
Mm,
research on this, and one of the reasons why I like talking with researchers on these podcasts is it's
mm,
based on what can we know as best
mm,
we know it, and that's constantly evolving. We're always learning more.
mm,
The difference between that and you mentioned people are interested in making money. And
mm.
without really understanding what's going on, they'll develop something. Oh, here's the quick and easy solution to your problem, and it's not always a quick and easy thing. So I'm wondering, based on your knowledge of
Mm.
the research and the work you're doing,
Mm.
what are some of the things that interested you in how mindfulness might influence people who are experiencing this kind of fatigue? What have you found in this? What brought you to it in the first place?
Yeah, well, it came about because one of the things, the approach that as a service we would use is not a mindfulness-based approach. It's a rehabilitative or self-management approach, probably the best word for it. Um, where we're not curing it. We know if there was a cure, that would be one thing. What we know doesn't cure it. So I think it's really important to say that, first of all. But it's so therefore, if we can't cure it, if there isn't an easy answer, there isn't something that's going to sort it out, then how do we live? So that would be the question of the work, is how do we live with this? And so we run sort of different sorts of programs and do individual therapy, all sorts of different ways of doing this to support people with that. And so we meet everybody at the end of it, and just to sort of see, how's it going. And I meet a number of people who would say it's all very well, all that activity management, pacing, how do I manage it, take care of myself, but it's really hard. It's also really boring because if I've got to change things, it's really difficult to change. And also one of the things that we see is one which I haven't mentioned is that what we see is the system and the body is in a state of dysregulation, which means very activated. So the immune system, the nervous system, everything is in a state of it's sort of trigger happy, and it sort of flips on the sort of illness, the symptoms that normally have a place if there was a virus, for example, but they don't when there isn't. But that experience comes on very fast for people, and we see that as a sort of dysregulated state, which means if your nervous system's really hyped up, it's really, really hard to rest. So you're exhausted and you can't rest, and your sleep is probably challenged as well. Just even getting to sleep is difficult. So I see people go, well, I still can't rest. I'm meant to be resting, meant to be pacing, can't do that. And or I am doing it, but I don't like it. So, so I meet a lot of people who would say that. And then I also would meet people who go, well, actually, I'm a meditator, or I have a yoga practice, and I've adapted my yoga practice and my meditation practice, and it really supports me being able to sort of see this in a different way. So I was somebody who had that sort of practice and actually came to it from my own experience of having a really rough year health-wise, and took myself off to India and learned to meditate as part of my sort of managing myself. So I was going, well, actually, I get that. And then I came across the MBSR and MBCT work and did some stuff for myself. And I thought, and was talking to people. So, well, should we have a go? So then we sort of developed a program, and it's aimed at those people who have done all the other stuff, and it's just really hard to accept, really hard to rest. How can I do this? So if you like, mindfulness offers a really lovely way to use, I'd rather call it friendly awareness, really. So it's friendly awareness of, gosh, what is this situation? This is really rough. I don't like it. Lots of people don't believe me. I don't believe it. People say that. So can we notice how that is? as well, at the same time, we can maybe down regulate a bit through, breathing out, leaning back, unwinding. And then we can start to cultivate an awareness of this moment and also ask some maybe helpful questions. So inquirers like, well, what is this moment? And how can I take care of myself? Bearing in mind how I am in this moment and what maybe need to happen in the next moment. So it creates a space to inquire into it rather than giving anybody else any more good ideas. We don't need any more ideas. Everybody's got all the ideas. It's go, okay, how can I integrate my knowledge of myself and my knowledge of health management into a very practical, tangible way right now? So that's where I see mindfulness really.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like it's addressing the experience of what you're going to go through anyway, what is here, because that fatigue is in place. And how, well, as you said, how do you take care of yourself in this? And it may be a little different than what we want to do, which is to
Yep.
turn away, instead turn towards and see, oh, what can we do here while taking care of ourselves?
Yeah.
Yeah, Fiona, for people who may have come to this, found this particular episode because they are struggling with fatigue, and it's not just not a good night's sleep, it's a true and deep in their bones, in their mind, in their heart and emotions. It's affecting and really dysregulating for them. What are some things you might share with them? Maybe some encouragement or suggestions about how they might approach this difficulty that is here in their lives.
I think the most important thing is it's not your fault. It's really, really important, which also means you can't just keep trying to get better. I think that the most people I see have just been trying, and because there is all that input from outside of you just ate the right food, did the right exercise, all that stuff. It's almost let's just put that down and I think sometimes it's as simple as it's coming to the body and can I make myself 5% more comfortable right now? Can I lean back, breathe out? The natural processes that culturally we're down on, sighing, groaning, yawning is, you're not meant to do that, are you? And we do a lot of that. We can go, right, okay, because that automatically it helps down regulate. So it's kind of being able to sort of stop and unwind and honor that this is a thing, this is a condition, and it needs some very strategic and careful management. Because if we just follow this moment, I feel all right this moment. I was talking to somebody today, I should feel all right this moment, and then I start telling myself it's not real, is it? I need to go and do all those things. It's like, whoa, okay, no, this is, you can enjoy this moment if you're feeling good. Really enjoy it. But also it's then kind of they're not creating the potential for all the other stuff that can happen afterwards when you can't move. Or if you are going to do that, it's acknowledging that moment will need its care. So there's nothing wrong in overdoing it and pushing it. And sometimes it's impossible not to. But it's then how can you then take care of that thing that happens afterwards as well? So it's complicated, I think. It's very it's you've kind of got the ups and the downs with it.
Yeah, and that really speaks to the heart of this, which is that it is complex. There's not a quick fix in this. It does take your attention, your care, and you can do that. Right? For people who have come to this, know that it's not hopeless. How you meet these difficulties is part of the process of this, what may be a new normal, and yeah, those are
Yeah.
adjustments you could make.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the reasons I'm kind of here is I've got, the people, I have the feedback we're having, people go, this is helping, and you need to tell people about it. That's kind of why I'm here. I'd rather just be in my clinic doing my work, doing a bit of writing. And they go, no, go and tell people about it. And and then they would be, it's really, yeah, really heartening and really quite a privilege actually to have been support people through this, and to drop the self-blame and to drop the whole thing, and just to take care in a more gentle way, I think.
Yeah, beautifully said.
Mm.
So for those who are watching or listening, I'm going to have some links for you in the spot where links are found for this. And our guest today, Fiona McKechnie. Thank you so much, Fiona, for being here and sharing this work and for your doing this work.
Oh, thanks, Tad. Thanks for helping me share more about it.
Thanks for tuning in. And again, as a reminder, please do subscribe to this podcast if you're getting some value out of it. It does help other people to find it. Remember, every moment you have a choice. Make it the best you can. And I'll see you next time on Mindfulness Voyage.